It all started with a text message. The kind that seems so ordinary at first, so mundane, that you barely think to glance at it twice. "Are you coming to the party tonight?" it said. It was from Sarah, my wife. But, truth be told, it didn't feel like she was my wife anymore. I couldn't even remember the last time she called me with anything resembling affection. When did we get here? To the point where it was just another event to get through. Another night to endure. That morning, I had been working, buried under paperwork at my desk, glued to my screen, when I saw the message. I thought about it for a few seconds, then shrugged and typed a response. "I guess so. I'll be there." I didn't think anything of it. No excitement. No anticipation. It wasn't even that I didn't care. I just didn't know if I could care anymore. I had no clue where we stood. For weeks, Sarah had been distant. We hardly talked. No shared laughs. No intimate moments. Just passing days, where we moved through our routine like roommates, not partners. The drive to the party felt longer than it actually was. I didn't want to go, but there I was, sitting in the passenger seat as Sarah drove us to her boss's party, some company thing that I didn't even want to attend. Sarah had changed. Maybe she hadn't, but to me, she was a different person. She seemed more interested in the world outside our home than the one we'd built together. And I had to admit, I wasn't innocent either. I had been drifting. I knew it. But this wasn't just my fault. I wasn't blind. We arrived at the venue, a sleek, modern restaurant, and the first thing I noticed was the sound of laughter. Not just any laughter. Hers. It was light, carefree, the kind that used to make me smile, but now it felt distant, almost foreign. I couldn't place it. But I knew one thing. She wasn't laughing like that with me anymore. I followed her inside. She was glowing. And why wouldn't she be? Her friends, her coworkers, everyone at the party was eating out of her hand. She was the center of attention, just as always, and for a brief moment, I found myself wishing I could be the one who held her focus, just for a second. But I wasn't. I stood off to the side, nursing a drink, watching her from across the room. It wasn't jealousy that gnawed at me, it was confusion. The confusion of seeing the woman I married being adored by everyone but me. I wasn't a fool. I knew it wasn't just me who was noticing the spark in her eyes when she looked at him, Daniel. The one man who seemed to have Sarah's full attention. Tall, handsome, with a laugh that seemed to fill the space between them. They weren't just talking, they were connected. She leaned into his words. He leaned into hers. It wasn't innocent. I could see it in the way their faces were close, in the way her smile lingered just a little too long. This wasn't the friendly conversation I had hoped it was. But this was different. This wasn't just a fleeting moment. It wasn't just a harmless chat. No, tonight was different. I could feel it in the air, thick and suffocating. Every laugh they shared seemed to tear away at something in me. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt. I was numb. I walked to the table, trying to shake the feeling of being invisible in my own life. That's when I saw the ring on my finger, the one Sarah had put there. It was supposed to be a symbol of our commitment, our vows, but now it felt like a prison. A reminder of what I had lost, of what we had both allowed to slip away. I didn't think about it. I just acted. I took the ring off, feeling its cold weight in my palm. And then I placed it on the table. The action was simple. In hindsight, it probably didn't make much sense. But in that moment, it felt like the only thing I could do. The only thing that might snap me out of this bizarre trance I had been living in. The room felt like it was closing in on me, but I didn't care anymore. I wasn't going to stand there, pretending. I wasn't going to smile and cheer on the same man who had now taken something I thought belonged to me. I left the table and walked toward the door. It was only when I stepped outside, the cool night air brushing against my face, that I realized I wasn't leaving for any simple reason. I wasn't just walking away from the party. I was walking away from everything. I didn't expect it to be like this. I thought it would be simple, Just walk away, take a step back, and figure it out. But the moment I turned my back on the door, something inside me broke. I wasn't angry. I wasn't furious. It was worse than that. It was emptiness. A hollow feeling, like I was floating above everything, watching my own life from a distance. Outside, the night was quieter than usual, a contrast to the noise I had left behind. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the conversations all seemed to blur into the background as I stood there on the sidewalk, staring at the dimly lit street ahead. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I had just done. Did I really just leave her like that? Without a word? Without a fight? It felt so sudden, but in a way, it wasn't sudden at all. I had been letting this happen, letting us slip into this strange, distant space where we lived together but didn't live together. The kind of space where the only thing that felt real anymore was the silence that stretched between us, thick and suffocating. And then there was Daniel. I didn't know when it started. I didn't know when the shift had happened, when she had gone from being my Sarah to someone else's. Maybe it was a gradual thing, the way her eyes lit up when she talked to him, or how she started dressing differently when they had their meetings. But tonight, it hit me like a punch to the gut. The way she laughed at his jokes, the way she was present with him in a way that she hadn't been with me in months. Years, even. I looked down at the ring again, still in my hand, the weight of it pressing into my palm. What had it all meant? What did any of it mean now? That ring, the vows, the promises, all of it felt like some distant, fading memory. A memory that had no place in the life we were living now. I slid the ring back onto my finger, then let out a sigh. What was I supposed to do now? Go back inside and pretend like nothing happened? That I didn't just see my wife, my Sarah, laughing with another man? I wasn't that man. The answer came to me almost immediately. I wasn't going back. I wasn't going to beg for her attention, for her affection. I wasn't going to be the man who stood in the background and watched her drift further and further away from me. No, I had made my decision, and there was no going back now. It felt like time had stopped for a second as I turned around and started walking. The streets were empty, except for the occasional car that passed by, its headlights cutting through the darkness. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there, not with that feeling gnawing at me. I didn't realize how far I had walked until I stopped at a small park, the soft crunch of gravel beneath my shoes the only sound breaking the silence. The park was empty, dark, and eerily quiet. It was strange to be here, in this place, but it felt like the only place I could breathe. That's when the first text came through. Seth, where are you? Please come back. We need to talk. It was Sarah. Her words were sharp, desperate, a stark contrast to the light-hearted laugh I had heard just moments ago. It hit me like a wave, the sudden rush of emotions, of guilt, of anger. What was I supposed to say to her now? Talk about what? I didn't send it. Instead, I stared at my phone for what felt like an eternity, the weight of her words hanging over me. Was I really going to go back? Was I going to give in to this need for closure, this desperate urge to fix everything? No, I wasn't. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about me, and about the man I had become, the man I was trying to avoid. The phone buzzed again. I don't understand. What did I do? Her words were softer now, almost pleading. Please, Seth, don't leave me like this. Not tonight. For a moment, I felt the pull. I felt that familiar tug in my chest, the one that had kept me tethered to her for all these years. But then I thought about tonight again. Her laughter, her smile, her eyes locked with his. I thought about how easy it was for her to slip away from me, how little she seemed to care. I put the phone in my pocket and looked up at the stars. There was a strange kind of peace that washed over me, a calmness I hadn't felt in ages. I had made the right decision. For the first time in a long while, I could see clearly. I wasn't going back. Not this time. I don't know how long I stood there in the park, just staring at the dark horizon. It felt like time had frozen, like I had entered a new world where the weight of everything hadn't caught up with me yet. But then, reality came crashing back like a tidal wave, pulling me under. The phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Sarah that made my heart skip a beat. Please don't leave me like this. I need to understand what's going on, Seth. Talk to me. For a second, I thought about responding. I thought about explaining, about telling her how much it hurt to see her so easily slip away, how it felt to watch her laugh with someone else while I stood in the background, invisible. But something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to explain. I wasn't going to beg her to see me. Because the truth was, I had been begging for months. For years, maybe. Begging for her attention, for her love. But it wasn't real. It was just me desperately holding on to something that had already slipped through my fingers. I pulled the phone out of my pocket and turned it off. No more messages. No more calls. No more pretending that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. It was liberating, in a way. It felt like I had just cut the last tether that had been holding me back from something. Something I wasn't sure of yet, but I was going to find out. I began walking again, my steps slower now. The cool night air felt good against my skin, but there was something else there, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. Something was about to change, and I didn't know if I was ready for it. But as I walked, my thoughts kept returning to Sarah. The way she had looked at me earlier, when I had walked out of the party. The shock in her eyes. She hadn't expected me to leave, not like that. I could still picture the way her face fell when she saw me walking toward the door, her mouth opening to say something, but no words came out. And then there was Daniel. I couldn't shake the image of him standing next to her, his arm casually draped over her shoulders, his laugh too loud in my ears. I had told myself I was imagining things, that it wasn't what it looked like. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had always known. I didn't want to admit it, but I was angry. Not just at her, but at myself. I had let it get this far. I had let us both drift into a place where we couldn't even talk to each other anymore. And now, it was too late. I walked aimlessly for a while, the city lights casting long shadows across the sidewalk. My mind was racing, but there was no clarity. No answer to the question that had been haunting me for months. What now? After a while, I found myself standing in front of a small diner. The neon sign flickered, casting a faint red glow over the street. I hadn't realized how far I had walked, but there it was, an oasis in the middle of the chaos, a place that felt safe, familiar. I stepped inside, the bell above the door jingling softly. The place was quiet, almost empty except for a few people scattered in the booths. I slid into a seat at the counter, not really looking at the menu, not really thinking about food. I just needed a moment to breathe. A moment of peace before everything exploded. The waitress came over, and I ordered coffee without even thinking. I didn't need anything else. Just something to keep me awake, something to ground me in this strange, surreal moment. As she walked away, I glanced around the diner, but my mind kept drifting back to Sarah. To the look on her face when I left, to the empty space between us that had been growing for so long. How had we gotten here? How had we ended up so far apart? The answer was simple, really. We hadn't chosen each other anymore. Not in the way we used to. She had chosen him, and I had chosen to stay silent. I had chosen to let her go, step by step, while convincing myself that things would get better. But they never did. And now, here I was, sitting in a diner, alone, wondering where it had all gone wrong. I sipped the coffee, letting the bitter warmth fill me for a moment. And that's when I saw it. A message. I know what you saw. I didn't mean for you to find out like this. Please call me back. We need to talk. It was from Sarah. I stared at the screen for a moment. The weight of it, the urgency in her words, almost made me want to call her back. Almost. But then, I remembered what had happened tonight. The way she had looked at me when I walked out. The way Daniel had been standing too close, laughing too loud. And I realized something. No, I wasn't going to call her back. Not now. Not when I had finally made the choice to stop being the one who always came running when she called. I set the phone down on the counter and leaned back in my seat. The world was shifting, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared of what came next. In fact, I was starting to look forward to it. The diner was emptying out as the night grew later, and yet I couldn't pull myself away from the stillness. My coffee had long since gone cold, but I hadn't touched it. My mind, however, was anything but still. It was a constant hum of thoughts, memories, and unspoken questions. Was this my fault? Had I been blind to the cracks in our relationship, pretending everything was okay just because I didn't want to face the truth? It wasn't just Sarah and Daniel. It was me. I had let myself become complacent. For months, I had let the silence between us grow, thinking somehow it would resolve itself. But it didn't. And now I had to face the consequences. I ran my fingers over the smooth surface of the counter, feeling the cold, polished wood beneath my touch. That ring, the one I had left on the table at the party, it felt like a weight I couldn't carry anymore. I had thought it was a symbol of our commitment, our promise. But in that moment, I had realized it was nothing but a reminder of everything I had failed to see. I stood up suddenly, pushing my chair back with a scrape that echoed through the empty diner. The waitress glanced over, but I didn't meet her eyes. I just grabbed my coat and stepped back into the cold night air. The streets felt different now. The lights seemed dimmer, the sounds of the city quieter. It was as if the world had shifted, and I was standing on the edge of it, unsure of what came next. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just knew I couldn't stay in that diner, couldn't stay in that moment any longer. I started walking, letting the cold air fill my lungs, pushing away the fog in my mind. My feet moved on autopilot, taking me somewhere I hadn't planned to go. I needed answers, but more than that, I needed something to distract me from the crushing weight of what I had just realized. I had been living in denial for so long, but the truth hit me like a freight train. I had been ignoring her for months. I had been letting her slip away, and now she was gone. I found myself in front of a bar, its neon sign flickering in the distance. It wasn't the kind of place I usually went to, but tonight felt different. I needed noise, I needed people, I needed something to drown out the constant pounding in my head. I walked in, the heavy door creaking as I pushed it open. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses hit me immediately, but it didn't feel welcoming. It felt like a reminder of everything I was missing, everything I was losing. I stood there for a moment, surveying the room, before heading to the bar. The bartender, a young guy with a sleeve of tattoos, gave me a nod as I slid onto a bar stool. I didn't say anything. I just ordered a drink, something strong, something that could numb the gnawing ache in my chest. The drink arrived in front of me, but I didn't touch it. I just stared at it, lost in thought. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I could hear the sound of my phone buzzing, but I didn't bother checking it. It was probably Sarah again, pleading for me to come back. But I wasn't ready to go back. Not yet. A couple of guys sitting nearby started talking to me, but I wasn't really listening. They were friendly enough, but my mind kept drifting back to Sarah, to the way her eyes had met mine for that split second before I left the party. The way she had looked so shocked, so vulnerable. She hadn't expected it. She hadn't expected me to walk away. And for a brief moment, I wondered if she would come after me. Would she call? Would she beg me to come home? Would she even care enough to try and fix it? But then I remembered the night. The way she had been with Daniel. The way she had laughed at his jokes, her hand casually brushing against his arm. It was so easy for her, so effortless. She didn't even have to try. And that was when it hit me. She had already made her choice. I didn't know when it had happened, but I knew now. She had stopped choosing me. She had stopped caring, or maybe she never did as much as I thought. I finished the drink in front of me, feeling the burn as it slid down my throat. It didn't help. Nothing did. The emptiness inside was still there, just as sharp, just as painful. The door of the bar opened, and I looked up instinctively. For a second, I thought I saw her, Sarah. My heart jumped in my chest, but it was just a woman walking in with a friend. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding and turned back to my drink. It was time to stop pretending. Time to stop holding on to something that wasn't real anymore. The hours felt like minutes as I sat there at the bar, nursing that drink and letting the noise of the place wash over me. The clink of glasses, the laughter, the chatter, it all blurred into a distant hum. I wasn't really there. My mind was somewhere else, somewhere far away, spinning in circles over what had happened, over what I had done. It was strange, but I wasn't angry. Not in the way I thought I would be. I should have been furious. I should have been pacing, smashing things, confronting her, confronting him. But no, I was calm. Too calm. As if some part of me had already given up on the idea of fighting for something that had already slipped through my fingers. I had been holding on, like a fool, hoping things would get better. But they hadn't. And now, I had made my choice. My phone buzzed again. I knew it was her. It had to be. I'd been avoiding her all night. She had texted, then called, then texted again, but I couldn't bring myself to reply. I wasn't ready. Not yet. Part of me wondered if she even realized what was happening. Part of me doubted that she did. Maybe she was too busy with Daniel to notice the cracks. Maybe I was just a convenience to her now. Another message flashed on the screen, and my heart skipped a beat. Seth, please. I don't understand what's going on. I'm sorry if I've hurt you. Please call me. I need to fix this. For a moment, I stared at the message, the words slowly sinking in. I need to fix this. Fix what? A marriage that had been broken for months? A relationship that had already fallen apart without either of us willing to admit it? I wasn't sure anymore. But what I was sure of was that I couldn't fix it alone. And she wasn't going to fix it for me. Not if she didn't even know where to begin. I slid the phone into my pocket without replying. I wasn't ready for a conversation. I wasn't ready for her to apologize and pretend that everything could go back to normal with a few words and promises. She didn't even know what was broken. How could she? The bartender slid another drink in front of me without asking. I didn't even look at him, just nodded in acknowledgement as I reached for the glass. But this time, I didn't drink. I let it sit there, untouched, the ice beginning to melt. The liquid was cold, but it didn't numb anything. Nothing could numb this. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the flickering neon sign outside the window, watching the cars pass by. The city seemed so distant, so far away from the mess I had left behind. The world was spinning on, indifferent to the storm raging inside me. But I wasn't sure what to do next. I felt a sudden urge to go back to the apartment, to confront her, to force her to face the reality of what had been happening between us. But then, I remembered her smile with Daniel, her eyes locked on his, the way she moved closer to him with every passing minute. That smile wasn't for me. It was for him. It was like a light had gone out in me, one I hadn't even known was there until it was gone. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I couldn't go back. Not now. Not after seeing what I had seen. I couldn't let myself be the man she ran to when things went wrong. I couldn't be the backup plan anymore. I wasn't going to sit there waiting for her to choose me again, because she had already made her choice. She just hadn't had the guts to admit it. The bartender came over again, this time with a question I didn't expect. "You okay, man?" I looked up, startled by the simple question. I hadn't realized how much I'd been zoning out, how long I had been sitting there, lost in my thoughts. "I'll be fine," I said, trying to sound casual. But even I didn't believe it. He nodded, not pressing further. Instead, he just turned to the next customer, and I was left alone with my thoughts again. I stood up abruptly, tossing a few bills on the counter. "Keep the change." I didn't look back as I walked out. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I had to leave. The cool night air hit me again, a reminder that I was still here, still standing, despite everything. Despite her. Despite the truth. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was doing. But I knew I had to get away, to escape the place where everything had fallen apart. And as I walked down the street, I couldn't help but feel like something inside me had broken, and it was never going to be the same again. But what if that was okay? What if I had to break in order to rebuild? What if, for the first time in my life, I wasn't meant to fix this? I didn't realize how far I had walked until I found myself standing in front of the building that used to be our home. It was strange, almost surreal, seeing it from the outside like this. The lights were on in the windows, but there was no warmth in them. There was no comfort in the thought of walking back through that door. For a second, I considered turning around and just walking away. I had made it this far without looking back, hadn't I? But then I thought about Sarah, about how we used to be. We used to be a team. We used to talk about our future, about building a life together. But what had we built? It wasn't a home. Not really. It was a house, a place we both inhabited, but we hadn't truly lived in it for months. I felt a cold wave wash over me as I reached for the door. I had made my decision, and now I had to face it. There was no avoiding it anymore. I stepped inside, the familiar creak of the door opening echoing through the hallway. The place smelled the same, a mix of Sarah's perfume and the faint scent of coffee from the mornings we spent together. I paused for a moment, standing in the living room, waiting for the realization to hit. But all I could feel was emptiness. The silence between us was louder than the noise of the city outside. I walked through the space, my footsteps soft on the hardwood floor, and I found myself in the kitchen. The place where we used to sit and talk for hours, laughing, sharing our day. It was where we first met, where we had made those promises to each other, promises that felt so distant now. I leaned against the counter, my hands gripping the edge, trying to steady myself. I hadn't prepared for this moment. I didn't know what to say, or if there were even words that could fix this. The phone buzzed in my pocket again, interrupting my thoughts. It was Sarah. This time, I didn't even need to look at the screen to know what it said. She wanted answers. She wanted me to explain myself. She wanted us to go back to the way things were. But I knew deep down that things couldn't go back. We were beyond that. I opened the message. "Seth, please. I can't stand this silence anymore. We need to talk. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. Just please, let's fix this." Her words were raw, desperate, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of something. Maybe guilt, maybe hope, but I knew better than to fall for it again. I had been here before, promising myself that things would change, that she would change. But she didn't, and neither did I. I took a deep breath and set the phone down on the counter, making my way back toward the hallway. I had to face her. I had to face what was left of us. There was no avoiding it. I found her sitting on the couch, her hands tightly gripping her phone, her eyes red from crying. She looked up when she heard my footsteps, but there was no surprise in her eyes. She knew what was happening. She had felt it too. The distance between us. The shift that neither of us had the courage to confront until now. Seth, she whispered, her voice breaking. Why did you leave? Why didn't you talk to me? I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. What was there to say? How could I explain the years of growing apart in a few simple words? How could I make her understand the ache that had been building in my chest for so long? I couldn't stay there anymore, Sarah. I finally said, my voice hoarse. I couldn't pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. She looked down at her hands, the silence stretching between us, heavy and suffocating. I could see the hurt in her eyes, but there was something else too, something I hadn't expected, a flicker of guilt, of realization. Is it over? She asked softly, almost afraid of the answer. I hesitated. The question hung in the air, and for the first time, I realized that I had no answer. I didn't know if it was over. I didn't know what we were anymore. All I knew was that I couldn't keep pretending. Not when we were both so far from the people we once were. I don't know, I whispered, but I can't keep doing this. I turned and walked toward the door again, leaving her sitting there, the weight of my words settling between us. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Not when I knew that leaving was the only way I could start moving forward. The city outside was quieter now, the streets empty, the neon lights casting long shadows on the pavement. I didn't know where I was going, but I wasn't looking for answers anymore. I was looking for something else. Something I hadn't realized I needed until now. Freedom. I didn't have a destination in mind when I stepped out of the apartment, but it didn't matter. I was walking, and that was all that mattered in that moment. The city had a strange way of making you feel small, insignificant, yet alive all at once. The streets were eerily quiet at this hour, and every step I took seemed to echo in the emptiness around me. The weight of the night, of the conversation I had just had with Sarah, of everything that had led up to this moment, was pressing down on me. But it was a weight I was finally ready to carry. I don't know how long I wandered, maybe an hour, maybe more. I passed a few quiet bars, saw people laughing and talking, lost in their own worlds. But I wasn't part of any of it. I was a spectator, detached from everything that once felt so normal, so easy. Eventually, I found myself by the river. It was peaceful here, the sound of the water gently flowing beneath the bridge. I leaned against the railing, staring at the dark water below. Everything felt like it had led me to this moment, this place of stillness, where the storm inside me could finally settle. I pulled out my phone again, the same message from Sarah still sitting there, waiting for a response. I almost deleted it. I almost closed the app and moved on. But I couldn't. The need to hear her voice one last time, to know if there was still something left of what we had, was too strong. I hit call, without thinking, and the line rang once, twice. On the third ring, she answered. Seth. Her voice was shaky, hoarse, as if she had been crying. Yeah, I said, my voice sounding distant even to me. I didn't want to leave you like that, but I couldn't stay. There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear her breathing, the sound of her trying to hold it together. I don't know what happened, Seth, she said quietly. I don't know how we got here. I wanted to respond, to tell her everything that was building inside of me, but the words wouldn't come. What could I say? That I felt like I had been invisible for so long? That I had watched her slip away, piece by piece, and all I had done was sit there and hope it would get better? That I had been waiting for the Sarah I knew to come back, but she never did? Is it over? Her voice cut through my thoughts, soft and uncertain. I closed my eyes, the words I had been avoiding finally coming to the surface. I don't know. I don't know if it's over, but I know I can't keep living like this. I can't keep pretending. I could hear her sniffle, and I felt a pang of guilt. But there was no turning back. The decision had already been made. I didn't mean for things to go this way, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I never wanted to hurt you. But maybe we've already lost each other. I didn't know how to respond. The truth of it hit me in waves, overwhelming and heavy. But there was nothing left to say. I had already made my choice. I'll always care about you, Sarah, I said, finally finding the words. But I don't know how to love you anymore. Not the way I used to. I can't go back to that. Another long silence stretched between us, and I knew then that this was the end. The finality of it felt heavy in my chest, but strangely, it also felt like a relief. For the first time in so long, I wasn't waiting for something that would never come. I wasn't holding on to a ghost of what we used to be. I'm sorry, she whispered. I really am. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The words had already been said. We were done. I ended the call without another word. The weight of it settled into me, and I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The city lights shimmered on the water, reflecting the uncertainty of the path ahead. I didn't know what came next. I didn't know what my future looked like or where I was going, but for the first time, I didn't need to. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't waiting for her to make a choice. I had made mine, and it was time to move forward. It had been a week since I made the call, since I walked away from Sarah and from everything we once had. In the days that followed, there was silence. The kind of silence that feels like it stretches on forever, each moment heavier than the last. At first, I thought I would crumble under the weight of it all. But as the days passed, something unexpected happened. I started to breathe again, to feel the world around me in ways I hadn't in a long time. There were moments of sadness, yes, moments where I questioned whether I had done the right thing, whether I had made a mistake by walking away. But then there were moments of clarity, when I realized that I had to do this for myself. I had been holding on to something that wasn't mine to hold on to anymore. The city felt less like a place I was trapped in and more like a canvas, waiting for me to fill it with something new. I found myself walking the streets with a lightness I hadn't known in years, no longer looking over my shoulder, no longer waiting for the past to catch up with me. One afternoon, I found myself at the park again. The same park where I had stood weeks ago, lost in thought and uncertain about everything. But this time, there was a sense of peace. I sat on a bench, watching the trees sway gently in the breeze, feeling the warmth of the sun on my skin. It felt like a new chapter was unfolding, one where I was in control of the pen. As I sat there, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I hesitated before pulling it out. It was from an unknown number, but something in my gut told me it was Sarah. Seth, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I need you to know something. I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened, and I've realized something. We were both responsible for what went wrong. I'm sorry for how things ended, and I'm sorry I let us get to this point. But I want you to know that I'm working on myself. I'm learning, growing, and I hope one day we can be friends again. I'll always care about you, and I wish you nothing but happiness. I read the message twice, letting it sink in. There was no apology for the way things were, no promises that we'd pick up where we left off. But there was something more important, the acknowledgement that we were both at fault, and that we both had room to grow. The weight of the past was beginning to lift, piece by piece. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing a response. Thank you, Sarah. I'm not ready to be friends yet, but I do hope you find what you're looking for. And I'll keep moving forward. I wish you the best. I hit send and put my phone back in my pocket, letting the world around me swallow me up again. It wasn't about closure. It was about freedom, the freedom to move forward, to leave behind the pain and the mistakes, and step into something new. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the park as I stood up. I didn't know where I was going next, but I knew one thing. I was finally moving forward. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. I walked away from the park, from the past, and into a future that was full of possibilities. Maybe I wasn't exactly sure what that future looked like, but I was ready to find out. I was ready to live again. And for the first time in a long time, I believed that I could.